Hi there, I'm John from CNCKing.com, and today we're going to laser cut MDF to make a mold for a chair. This is actually a project I did a while ago, and I just found the video again. But basically what I was doing was cutting 1/2 inch thick MDF using the laser behind me to make a whole bunch of different segments. When you put them together, you end up with a chair. And what the customer was doing was using that to make molds to make a cement chair. Now, when it comes to molds, most of the stuff that we do here in the shop actually involves, when it involves cement, is actually with Corian. The nice thing about Corian is that it can be machined very, very well. It's very strong. And the nice thing is it doesn't stick to the cement like MDF would. MDF in this case here, I'm assuming they're doing a silicone. So they're doing it first with a silicone, then they're filling up the silicone with concrete or something. I'm not sure the exact process they're using, but that's generally what you do when it comes to mold making of that nature. Something you have to keep in mind when it comes to laser cutting a thicker material is that it's exponentially slower to cut through material. So in this case here, it's 1/2 inch thick MDF, which is a fibrous board, basically just gluing sawdust with a lot of heat, all sort of mishmashed together. And it's quite hard. It's actually pretty stable material, which is why you see a lot of it in kitchen cabinetry and that kind of stuff, because it's consistent board after board. It's great. Now for this application here, the customer was making cement molds and they're just making one chair. So they needed me to make this for them. Now I had two options. I can use the laser as you see here, or I can use my router. Each has a plus and a minus. The advantage of a laser for this kind of work is that the router was already working, so I might as well just, boot up the laser and have it do the job. So I'm sort of doing two different jobs at the same time. But the nice thing about the laser is that if you want sharp inner corners, this is the only tool that can really do it for you because you're not limited by bit diameter. What I mean by that is with a CNC router, you're always using bits. Now I've used a bit as small as 1/64 inch, which is a fraction of a millimeter. It's crazy. It takes forever to cut stuff with. And you wouldn't use it for something like this. But even then, you're limited to an inner diameter of the bit's diameter. Now, for this project here, if I were to use my router, I'd probably use a 1/2 inch bit, and it'd be done a lot faster than the laser. So the laser is a lot slower process of cutting, but you get that sort of benefit there. Now, the nice thing about the router is that it's a two-way feedback system, meaning that let's say this material here, we needed little inner pockets. It's 1/2 inch, maybe some sections were 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch. That's not a problem with the router because it's a two-way feedback system. Well, with the laser, it really has no idea what it's doing. It's just 100% power, and how deep it goes depends on the speed. Now, 1/2 inch probably the thickest material I'd want to cut with my laser because it gets slower and slower as it has to sort of burn its way through the material. While with the router, it doesn't really matter. It's just a bit spinning, and it's just material excavation. And when it comes to MDF, you go full throttle, no problem at all, and produce really nice results. Now the laser does produce burned edges everywhere. For this application, it didn't matter at all, so that's why I ended up using it for it. With the router, you don't have that issue, but you do have hold down. So with the router, you need to hold material down, otherwise it goes flying across the shop. With the laser, as you can see, there's nothing holding this material down. There's nothing touching the material. It's just the laser cutting straight through it. Now that's what I like about the laser, and the router, they all have their plus and their minus. With a router, let's say you have different bits. So if you wanted, let's say, a chamfer, and you wanted different sort of details and carving and that kind of stuff, it's a great tool for that. Laser is not so good for that kind of stuff because you only have one tool, which is the laser beam. So what are the limitations when it comes to molds? If you have something like a very fine detail, let's say you have wording or text, definitely the way to go is with Corian. MDF loses a lot of strength, especially when you get to something very thin. And the nice thing about Corian is that it's very, very rigid as well. So you put it on the cement if you just want to make a mold on the top of it, let's say like an inlay sort of thing. Then you just got to put little blocks to hold it down. And then when it's done, you just lift it out. While with MDF, you need to do a special coating on it, because otherwise the water in the concrete will get into the MDF, and there's no way you're taking that apart. So again, the customer knew what they were doing. I've never done that kind of process. So I left it up to them to figure out, how best to proceed with that. Now, again, as I mentioned in the production video, we have a lot of routers here and lasers, and there's a lot of different ways of producing the same thing. For that project there specifically, the laser was totally fine and the router was fine. So it was a choice of either or, and it didn't really matter. It just happens that during that time that the router was busy doing other stuff, so I might as well, have the laser doing it. So if you're looking for custom molds, any size, any material, any shape, contact me at CNCKing.com. We'll make it for you and ship it right to your door.